Hi, Toby. How are you?
Hey, Martin. Good, thank you. How you doing?
Very well. Great to connect. Well, look, thank you very much for making today's fireside chat. Before we start, just for the benefit of the audience, would love for you to introduce yourself, give a little bit about your background, and then we can take it from there.
So yeah, hi, I'm Toby, and I have been in solution consulting for more than 2 decades. Previously, Director of Value Solutions at Hootsuite, also held similar roles at Oracle. I was solution consulting all the way back until I was a programmer back in my early 20s. I wasn't very good at that, so I moved into pre-sale consulting quite soon after. So
Right. It's interesting because there's quite a few different terms that may mean the same thing or similar things, or maybe there are nuanced differences. So you mentioned solutions consulting, and that is it's kind of the pre-sales within that universe of pre-sales, right? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I always say pre-sale, but quite often the role of the solution consultant or value consultant or solution engineer is primarily pre-sale, but can work post-sale as well, supporting the account managers and post-sale motions, CSMs on expansion opportunities, for example. So it is called pre-sale, but I think it works across the spectrum.
And solution consulting, does it differ from solutions architect, or are they synonymous?
No, they're different. Solution architects tend to be very much more technical, have a much broader and deeper understanding of how elements of a solution fit together, at the kind of data level, how to best architect your solution with, a portfolio of applications that you might need to deliver it. They have a much deeper and broader set of knowledge.
And so your role would be closer to a value consultant, value engineer?
Yes. So solution consultants are generally, historically, the product experts.
Yes.
But you can't get away with just being a product expert. You have to be a business value expert as well. So you have to be a subject matter expert. And sometimes those roles diverge, right? So we talk about value consulting and value engineering. They're diverged from solution consulting at their own team. But every solution consultant should be able to have a value conversation, whether that's running a workshop, building a business case, helping a customer or prospect identify the value of the solution that they're procuring to build a case for change. And sometimes that requires a separate team to do that, which sometimes sits within solution consulting and sometimes doesn't.
It's funny because I doubt there's a university degree or course in any sort of business school that talks to value consulting, value engineering solutions.
No, there isn't, and it's a very interesting role. And like solution consulting, it's a brilliant meld of business acumen and sales skills and technical curiosity, technical expertise and business knowledge. But your business value person, that's even more rare because they tend to have, in my experience anyway, they tend to have a background in business. They have a background in the domain that they are selling into. So we'll come on to this a little bit later, but they tend to be able to talk with a lot of credibility about the projects they've been involved in, the customers they've helped, and how they've created a value case within their own organization, and then they move into sales. They might start client side and then go vendor side, and then sometimes they swap back again. Yeah, it's a very interesting role, and there's not very many people who can uniquely do it.
It's very true. It is a very small community. It's a really interesting community, actually, in that, just to digress, because it feels there's a strong camaraderie across peers in the group, in the network. Everybody kind of knows each other. They may have, been at different companies together and built their expertise at a certain company and then maybe left and just stay as peers. It's really interesting to see it because as an overall methodology or a practice, it is becoming more and more valued and more aware at companies given the macroeconomic climate, right? Today, you can't just sell on features, you need to sell on value. How do you introduce a value orientation in an organization when the company's culture may have been based on their product and their features? And
most organizations are, particularly in the SaaS space, so most companies built a great product. Yes, there's a value case attached to it, but they come from engineering, right? They come from building an amazing product that people want to use. But yeah, there comes a point where you have to differentiate yourselves, right? Because if you look at any market, you can rip the logos off all the products and they look pretty much the same, right? So you have to differentiate yourself in some way, and it's the way you interact with clients, potential clients in pre-sale and post-sale, the way you help them, the advice you give, the expertise you bring, the partnership you bring, all of that is a differentiator. So yeah, it's becoming more value selling exist not just in a value consulting team or a value selling team or a value selling motion. It should exist across all of your customer facing people, salespeople, pre-sales people, customer success, account managers, and beyond, right? Value selling exists everywhere.
Do you think it's an indicator of a company's maturity, whether or not they have a business value practice or value selling? Like you said, there's different degrees of it, right? Whether some call it that or not, medic, and there's a number of different methodologies, qualification or value selling. But the value practice as a team, as a unit, and its relation to sales, do you think there is a positive correlation between level of a company's sophistication or maturity and their level of value practice?
I think definitely. Often you find if there is a value consulting team within an organization, it's because maybe a new CRO has come into the organization and they know how much of an impact it can make. So they build that team and they bring people in to kind of do it. And maybe it's a small team, but they bring it in. Or the CEO does it. Or they have a third-party consulting team that kind of comes in and gives them some value help, and then that becomes part of the value consulting team. So yes, it's part of that maturity. You don't start off like that. You realize that you need to start proving out the value of what you do during pre-sale. You need to offer expertise during pre-sale. When you talk about medic, that and there's every single sales process or sales methodology or sales approach on the planet has some form of why do something? Why do it now? And why do it with us? Right? There's some kind of, they all have this kind of idea.
The 3 whys.
The 3 whys, yeah. So why do something? Well, that's why change, right? That requires some sort of value case, which requires that you identify business metrics and business outcomes and attach yourself to those. And why do something now? Which means you need to attach some urgency to it, which means you need a business case and the cost of pain. And then why do something with us? Well, that's your unique. And the idea is, if you can attach your capabilities as a platform or a product to all of those 2 other things, then you're away. But so you have to have those proof points all the way along. You can't just do one of those 3.
We're finding, because we as a company, our goal is to help people sell using business cases. We believe that foundationally, even if you don't have a value practice, the need for a business case is always there. And it's something that the buyer, if you're not offering it, the buyer is going to ask for it and is going to need it. And if you're not being able to deliver it a compelling business case about why this, why now, why this, why us, why now, then your chances of winning reduce considerably. Like I said, the question is, how sophisticated does that process become within an organization? Maybe there's also a positive correlation between the level of complexity of the service and the pricing and everything of that business and the need for that value consulting arm. Yeah,
I agree.
If you were to break down value selling to its core foundational components, imagine you just enter an organization. They've got a product that is hit product market fit, but they just don't have a sophisticated sales team. It's probably people like us, like me, which are kind of founder-led sales and need the support of somebody to really come in and build that value practice. What would be those foundational principles that you would need to install?
So many. Hard to boil them down, but let's pick a couple. Sure. I think one is I think subject matter expertise is really important. So by that I mean, if you're selling a solution that helps with financial accounting, having a knowledge of the way that business function operates, because you've done some of it or you've been around it for a long time, is really important. So that's one thing, subject matter expertise. And the same if you're operating in a particular industry, pharmaceuticals or financial services, you've got to have a good credibility in there, subject matter expertise around that. Then another piece is very strong ROI. So how confidence to build a great strong ROI. And what you find is value consultants tend to also have a background in some kind of consulting where they've delivered business metrics or business cases, maybe from McKinsey or something like this, business change. But that's not enough, because the third thing you need is the ability to tell a narrative or craft a narrative around that business case, using your subject matter expertise and using your whatever you're selling and using the numbers, but to craft the narrative, not just for you to give to the prospect, but for the prospect to pass on and use themselves. So you craft a narrative together, and then they take it to their CFO and everyone else. So they need to get buy-in from, and they developed it with you, and then you're okay. But you need those 3 things. And I think the fourth thing is a thread that starts in pre-sale and goes all the way through to customer success. By that I mean, let's say you have, like, a lot of companies have value assessments of some kind. So you do, like, where are you on a maturity curve in this domain? So we have one at Hootsuite, we have one at HighSpot as well, which is like a maturity assessment, 4 or 5 stages, and you measure where you are on that thing. And then there's, depending if you're at stage 2, here's how to get to stage 3 and that kind of thing. So you can do that in pre-sale and like work out the best, you can advise on the best way of starting your project. But you then carry on, you do that again when they're in their first year, and again in their second year, and again in their third year. Any metrics you identify in pre-sale, you bring them through into post-sale. So you identified that in pre-sale that the biggest measure that someone is wanting to influence is win rate, for example. And that win rate is also influenced by quota attainment and also by maybe adoption of a particular sales play, for example. So you take those 3 metrics, that's very, very important. You join those 3 together, and that's the foundation of your business case for day one. And then you hand all that over to your customer success team, who make sure and build accountability with the actual team that deliver the thing in your customer, that's the metrics they look at, that's what they report up. And then you continue along the line, and then you run a value realization exercise as you go through it. You say, how much did we do this? How much did we achieve the metrics we set out to do? And then you build on and build on and build on from there. So it needs to carry on the thread.
So I assume then it's not just the GTM team, but it's also customer success. They need to be brought into the process and also be very well versed in what those value drivers are. Yes, absolutely. And you'll find that, that's the customer success teams should be about customer success. Quite often they come from maybe a technical background, product background, but they do sometimes come from a background where they have domain expertise. Right? They understand the subject matter, and they understand their customers really, really well, and they understand how to solve problems for their customers. It's not a big lift for them to start thinking about what the value cases. And actually, there's also a desire for them to help their solution owners, the people they interface with, raise their game as well. So if you think about where your customer success manager generally talks to, they should be talking at the above the line person or the head of. But quite often they get delegated down a little bit to the kind of solution owner level, and they struggle to get back up again. And the same thing happens with their customer. They get delegated down, and they want a seat at the table. So it's in everyone's interest to have those value conversations and value realization and value consulting and like identifying how your platform and how your capabilities influence those outcomes, which the chief revenue officer, chief people officer, chief risk officer, whatever, CISO, all those things. What are the metrics that they're interested in? And do they see that your platform, your product, your solution influences that? And when you joined HighSpot, how long ago was that, bro?
2 years.
Was there a robust value practice, or has it been built off the back of your?
We've been building up over time. We've been building up over the last couple of years. Yeah, it started with recognizing the need for subject matter expertise, making sure that because we're in revenue performance, revenue enablement, and so you need every salesperson, everyone who's been around sales understands how sales teams work, but you need a particular level of expertise there. So it started with we had already a business case calculator that we used and associated elements of that. We didn't have any way of engaging clients in a scoping discovery workshop to really start to identify what metrics mattered and why. So I developed that. We have an assessment tool, an assessment criteria, so we can do a value assessment, like a maturity assessment. But over the last couple of years, I've been building out standardized ways of rolling that out across sales, pre-sales, customer success, account management. Yeah.
What have you seen have been the benefits of deploying all these different parts of the value practice?
The benefits are that we've come out of a period in SaaS where it was, maybe before I joined, it was boom time, right? Yeah, there's lots of money around. You could buy software without having to necessarily,
without the approval at
the buying. It was still hard. But it wasn't as hard as it is now, or has been over the last couple of years. But I think the benefit has been everyone's raised their game. we're now saying, yes, actually, we do need to have a business justification for what we do here. And we need to make sure that business justification works at every single level, because it needs to work. You need to have a language in it that works at the kind of user level, at the head of, at the chief, at the whatever, in the director level, at different levels of narrative, like I talked about earlier. It needs to work at all those levels. So I think everyone understood that was the case. We've also implemented core provisions in our organization as well. And that's a very strong why change, why now message. So that's across the whole organization. But so the biggest benefit's been that, I think, like many organizations in software, you see this a lot, but the biggest competitor is nothing, no change. We've definitely seen a movement in no change.
Makes the why now so important, right? The cost of an action.
That's reduced quite a lot since we started doing this, which is great.
Oh, really? Sorry, if we can just focus on that element. So by introducing the value practice or value process, you've helped to reduce the loss to inaction. Effectively, you've helped to drive the case for change at your customers. That's
it's difficult to prove the attribution on that.
For sure.
You can say, what value action did we do with this prospect, and measuring those and who was involved, who was tagged to the opportunity. You can do that kind of analysis, but it's a very broad change of this nature. Is very broad and requires lots of change by lots of people. But we've definitely seen close no decision reduce.
And do you think that's because through value you're able to demonstrate the cost of inaction, or a clear? What we found is a lot of the time when deals die due to indecision, it's because the champion simply doesn't have the business case, the confidence to be able to go and get buy-in internally. And when they don't have it, then everything stalls. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've hit on it there. Is when you're part of a sales team or a company that sells B2B software or any solution, you've been through that motion many times. The company has a collective experience of thousands of these motions. And as an individual salesperson, you've maybe dozens of times you've done it, right? Within that company and hundreds within other companies. So you know what it takes to buy software or solutions or anything. It's sometimes harder than selling. There's a great book, and you probably read it. Selling is hard, buying is harder, I think it's called. Yeah. The team that founded Consensus. When you're in a procurement process and you want to get a solution for your department, your group, your company, you maybe haven't ever bought software before. Maybe you've done it once. Maybe you haven't bought it for the company you're working for right now. Or maybe you have, or maybe you haven't, but it's a small number. So there's a big learning process of how do I like the solution, I want the solution, but how do I go buy it? Yeah. And your lack of knowledge of all the people that need to be bought into it. So there's definitely that's a cause of indecision. Is just, it's not really indecision. It's more, I haven't built up a strong enough value case to make it compete with all of the other things that are on the CFO's list of things to do.
And let's face it, it's also a reputational risk, right? Like I was on a webinar yesterday with HubSpot, a company that we work with, and we talked about that. John McMahon's book in Qualified Sales Leader, where he talks about that stage of the buyer risk stage, where it comes down to, we got to sign. And a lot of deals die there because the buyer, they're putting, like you said, that individual, that champion, perhaps has never bought that type of solution before. And so if they haven't built the trust with the vendor in a way where they feel like they've got a compelling enough business case and a compelling, credible implementation plan, then the risk could be perceived as too high, right? So there's that need to.
And it's not just you can't just turn up with a business case at PDF and say, oh, we want to buy this solution. Here's the business case. And they'll look at it and go, well, this is the first time I've seen it. I was involved in a process earlier on this year, and it was brilliantly organized by the champions. There was a buying group, and they progressively introduced us to more and more senior people. And all the way, we were presenting our value case. And they would go, just tweak it a bit like this, or maybe I don't quite understand this bit. We'd talk through all the case, because it was very complex and very, had several different angles to it. And eventually we got to the global director of this function. And, but it took 4 or 5 meetings to get there. So that was very well executed. They knew that in order to get something through, they needed to get higher and higher and higher, right? And that was great. But a lot of the time, that knowledge is not there, and you have to work through that. And you have to you can't turn up as a salesperson or a sales team and say, look, here's how you buy software in your organization. Let me show you how it works. They'll go, what? I've just met you. I can't, I'm not going to listen to you. So you have to build the credibility first, right? It's necessary. That's why you have solution consulting. That's why you have great salespeople. Build the credibility up, show what's in it for them, then introduce how to convert their requirement into a business change conversation, and then get introduced higher. You have to build the credibility and move. The other thing that's quite risky to do is like ignore your champion completely and just go above their head, because credibility too. That's not so good.
Recipe for disaster.
Sometimes people do that, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, it's all about, for me, a key mantra for me is buyer enablement. So it's helping them as buyers do what they need to do, because ultimately our job is to turn them into heroes, get them promoted, to get a successful project under their belt. That's why we do our jobs, really.
In that business case, like I've said it before, it's not the vendors, it's the champions, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So when we talk about helping, we want people to sell using business cases, but we want people to buy using business cases. And so if they can collaborate together, then ultimately they can build a relationship from all the way from qualification, where they can use it just to qualify in or out, right? Very, very quickly. But if it's qualified in and they both understand that together there's value to be created by the vendor and the purchaser aligning, then they can formulate something that then becomes the very same tool that buyer goes in and gets internal alignment and buy-in. Ultimately, that kind of symbiosis is what we want. One should strive for the relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a whole buying team, of which the seller and the sales team, the selling team, are the enablers for. Yeah,
I love it. I love that way. The way to put it that way. What would you consider the biggest challenges to deploying a value practice or value selling motion at a company? Have you ever experienced friction, challenges, lack of internal buy-in for the process? Bit of like a Mr. Miyagi moment. You got to trust the process, right? I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Well, yeah, always. The behavior change is hard, whether you're changing the behavior of people, anyone in any walk of life. Behavior change is hard because people feel uncomfortable, especially in sales. If sales people have a process that works for them, then why would they need to change it, right? So I find that some salespeople are very risk averse, and some are very innovative, and they'll give it a try. So the best salespeople I've worked with on that front are say, well, I think we could try that thing you suggested, and let's try it with this company, and then let's see, but others will go, where has that worked before? Where's that worked? So there's a balance of when you take the great examples and the wins, and then you feed them back to they're not so keen to change, and then but the barrier is status quo, like we talked about. Status quo, everyone loves the status quo, so we have to be very careful of people's attitude towards change.
And let's face it, they're probably the busiest people, or some of the busiest people, right? Like they have to generate their own pipeline, qualify their pipeline, provide, rally the troops around the deal, have those meetings. It's a high pressure, high stress, of course, high reward.
And also there's loads of people outside of sales don't really understand, quota carrying sales, here. The amount of admin there is involved. There's a lot of admin. There's a lot of reporting up, and there's a lot of documentation, and a lot of...
If you're going to do it right, absolutely.
Forecasting and all of that. There's a lot of that. And anything new is going to make it harder to do all of those other things until you get good at it. So it's going to slow you down. So yeah, that's the barrier. So next question is, how do you get around those barriers, right?
No, but especially if it's a process that can be perceived as actually slowing down the sales process, because a lot of people will perceive, they'll have the first call, they'll qualify them in quickly with some sort of a criteria, then they'll do a demo, rush to a demo, then the team that'll get them there faster, right? Whereas actually your win rate will actually be considerably lower if you do it that way versus if you introduce a value selling motion that you may think it'll take longer in the early stages, but it should actually accelerate the final stage of decision making and signature. And people
slow it down to speed it up. That's what you say. Yeah, slow it down to speed it up. Yeah, because you will need all this information anyway. You will need the value metrics. You'll need a value case. You'll need a business case. You'll need a narrative. You'll need something that you need some very nice infographics that people can take around. You'll need buy-in from lots of people, and you can do that in a way that is structured and takes less time from your customer, or you can do it in an ad hoc, reactionary way that takes more time from you and more time for your customer. So you slow it down initially to speed it up, because if you get to the end and they go, oh, we can't get this project through because it hasn't got these 3 things. Oh, we better quickly go do those, and then we're in a rush and we haven't got it quite right. So yeah.
And if we're following the right approach, then your credibility within your reporting line in forecasting becomes much greater, because your level of confidence on a deal is much higher. Therefore, your boss, if it's a VP of sales or what have you, they have more confidence in the numbers you're presenting, because they know you're following a process whereby you are continuously qualifying that business, that opportunity.
Yeah, when our reps do a close plan, there's a checkbox in there. Have I done a value assessment or not? Have I done a business case or not? Have I run a value workshop with them or not? So then we know likelihood of, what's the forecast accuracy, as you say.
For the benefit of the audience, how would you define a value assessment and its core components?
So a value assessment would be, you're normally against a benchmark of industry peers or a benchmark of a cohort. It might be in your industry or just in general. Where are you in a maturity curve or a continuum of from the least mature to the most mature, by asking a series of questions, maybe 20 questions or so in different topics, but how confident people are with the answers to those questions, you can assess where they are on a maturity curve. And then you can say, okay, well, you're at stage 1 and you're just starting out. This is the best way of creating a solution for you that can give you the best impact at this time. So in our world, if people haven't even started to look after their content at all, their content's all over the place, it's in some SharePoint somewhere else, it's in Google Drive and it's a bit chaotic, they're kind of level 1. So you just get their content organized and get it in the right place, get it into salespeople's hands quickly, have them find it more easily, put some governance around it. That gets them into level 1, and then you can give some time back to sales. Then you're in level 2, which is the next level of complexity, and then you become. So it's a framework that helps you identify where you are in a continuum as compared with your peers.
Because it is one of those foundational core components of value selling, the value pyramid, assessment. They're all part of the toolbox, so to speak, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, for sure.
I know that we're running short on time, so I did have 2 more questions I'd love to ask you.
Sure.
We ask of all our guests. First one is, who is the best value consultant or value engineer you've ever worked with?
So I am going to call out a particular person. I'm going to call out Mark Abrami. And Mark Abrami works for Sprinkler now. I know that you're a friend of Sprinkler. Yeah. So Mark used to work for me in Hootsuite. He's one of those very rare people. He has an enormously deep social media knowledge. He's run social teams, he's run social marketing, social media management teams, social strategy within organizations, big ones and small ones. And he also understands what a business case is and how it should work and how to deliver it. So he uses those 2 things in combination to build great narratives with his clients. He does it with pre-sale and post-sale as well, as he did with me when we were at Hootsuite together. So yeah, I'll definitely call that Mark absolute rock star. He needs one of these.
Yes, I love it. And equally, you must have worked with many brilliant value sellers, the people, the account execs. Who are some of the best, or who's the best account exec value seller?
Well, when I was at Oracle, there were a team of people who came in from Responsys, which is a real-time marketing platform. And there was a particular team of people there. There was Claudia, who was in my team, and she was a business value consultant, also absolute superstar. She's retired now, but she had a great knowledge of value cases from her industry knowledge in retail. And then there was a guy called Steve Hallowell who created the value cases for Responsys, the value accelerators. I think he called them strategic accelerators, which is a way of expressing the value of responses, use cases the customer understood. So he was the chief value consultant, if you like. But there was a guy called Chris Gill, who was one of the sales leaders from Responsys, and he really understood this and rolled it out to his team. And he understood the value of doing things in this way. He was fantastic. So he would explain to his team, yes, it looks like what we're building here is an ROI, but it's not about the ROI. It's about the conversation. It's about the conversation you have with the customer all the way through to build up this case with them. So Chris Gill, I would say, he's a fantastic sales guy and sales leader.
Business value rock star right there. We'll get him a cast.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Awesome, Toby. Thank you. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Me too. Thank you very much.